Hey folks, welcome back to the Dungeon Dive. Daniel here. I hope you're doing well, and if you're not, I hope you are soon. And hey, I am super excited for today's episode, and that's going to be a look at Grimscar, a solo Hexcrawl RPG. And man, this game is absolutely awesome. I highly recommend Grimscar. And Grimscar is from Gunnar Almer, and it features art by Jake Abington. And this was actually published by Crowheart Roleplay Resources. And everything that you're going to see in this video is available now through the Crowheart website, and I'll post a link to that below. So we have the base game here. We have one small expansion called the Deep Thicket, and then we also have a deck of cards, and these are the bestiary cards. And so these cards will have some special cards that you can use to help you walk through the various steps of combat, as well as all of the cards for all of the weird creatures and monsters and people, weird people that you will meet while you're exploring the Dark Weald. And that's this forest that has surrounded the city of Grimscar. So right now there is a Kickstarter going on for I believe it's 4 or 5 new expansions, little zine expansions that will offer up other places that you can explore. And you can also get the base game on that Kickstarter in a bundle. And I will also post a link to that below. But yeah, man, this game is awesome. At its core, it's a pretty simple game. And it's a solo hex crawl. And you are going to be playing a character in the city of Grimscar. And your main mission, your main goal is to do quests for the citizens of Grimscar. You will be exploring the Dark Weald, and that is this kind of weird, mysterious, ever-changing forest that is encroaching upon the city of Grimscar and kind of cutting them off from the rest of the world. As you explore, you will be working your way through a forest, a dark forest, and a savage forest. And as you can imagine, the further away you get from the safety of Grimscar, the more perilous your adventure will become. I'm hoping that I can show you kind of the key concepts that I want to talk about via gameplay. But if I have to circle back and kind of show something, because of the random nature of this, that may not be possible. So we might have to force some elements into the video. But yeah, Grimscar is great, man. Grimscar RPG is a solo player role-playing game set in a grim, dark fantasy medieval world. And yes, this is dark and twisted. You will find very creepy things as you are exploring. Crucified men and women, skinless people, weird demons. And like I ran across this one demon who tore off some branches from a tree and shoved the branches in its head and then attacked me with them like antlers. super cool. But you will explore the Dark Weald, a massive, unending, deathly forest that surrounds the town of Grimscar. There is no escape for its citizens through the dangerous forest. They are being choked, starved, and cursed with an unending winter. Grimscar is your home. You are Grimscarian, and you must find answers. You will interact with the townsfolk, complete quests, develop your character, and help your people somehow bring salvation to this forsaken place. Now, one of the things that I really enjoy about this game is the writing. I think the writing is great. There's a lot of lore in this book. The book is over 100 pages, so it's not small. It's about 120 pages. And it has great rules. It has a really nice table of contents. It also has an index here on the back inside cover for all of the various tables, because there are a ton of various tables that you will be rolling on as you are exploring. If you don't feel like getting the bestiary cards, all of your bestiary information is here in the back as well. And then you can also print out your maps and your character sheet and your combat sheet. But not only does this book contain all of the rules and all of the random tables and your bestiary, it also has some really cool lore and background information, some of the mythology about Grimscar and its surrounding locations. So when you create a character, let's start by taking a look at the character sheet here. Very interesting. This game has a lot of interesting mechanisms. And I was kind of constantly surprised by how cool stuff was in this game. So you will pick a name and you will have an X profession. your character at the beginning of the game, you will roll on this random chart to determine your profession, such as a butcher, jailer, pugilist, a priest, a town crier, that kind of thing. And the profession will just give you kind of a bonus to one of your core stats. Now, the stats are super interesting. And we have rage, hatred, butcher, patience, pity, hope, survival, charm, and reputation. The first 6 up here, rage, hatred, butcher, patience, pity, and hope, these are your psych stats, your psyche stats. And these are kind of on a spectrum, and I kind of drew a little devil and an angel here showing that spectrum. And what's interesting is these will all start with a specified number. I believe it's 5 and then 4 or something like that. I can't remember exactly, but your stats will go up and down while you're playing. Your stats are a little bit different in this game. And all of your psyche stats, all 6 of these stats, can be applied to combat. Your first 3 stats, rage, hatred, and butcher, they kind of represent your anger at the world, at the grim and perilous existence of this life around Grimscar. How much rage are you filled with? How much do you hate the world? How much do you want to butcher things around you? The next 3, patience, pity, and hope, those kind of represent your humanity. And how maybe you want to have patience with people, or maybe you want to hold on to some hope in this grim, dark setting. When you use rage, hatred, or butcher in combat, you will add that to your combat roll, and that'll give you a total. However, each time you do that, you have to add 1 to the stat that you used, showing that you are becoming more violent, becoming more of a danger, becoming more filled with hatred as you are exploring. Conversely, when you use patience, pity, or hope, you can also add that value to your combat, but you subtract a 1 from each stat that you use, showing how you are kind of using up the goodness. It always seems with humanity, even in real life here, we have an unlimited amount of bad things and a very limited amount of good things that we can offer to the world. And it's very easy for us to use up our patience and our pity and our hope. And it's very easy for us to become filled with rage and hatred. And I just love that idea. And as you're keeping track of these totals, you kind of see a snapshot of your character's psyche and how they are dealing with the world that they are in. I think it's fantastic. We'll go over some more examples. Hopefully we can get into some combat. And what's also interesting is when you use one of these in combat, you do have to roll on a table where you will have some kind of negative thing will happen to you. Maybe you're pushing yourself too far in your rage or hatred, and you might have to pay some consequences for using those in combat. And then these will also come into play during some random encounters where it might tell you to check your butcher total. And if you have a certain total or less, or a certain total or more, something else might happen to you. Super, super cool. And then we have our physical stats here: hope, survival, and charm. Survival, charm, and reputation. Survival is often a currency that you can spend when you are out in the wilderness to search and to do certain things. Charm and reputation are how well you deal with the various NPCs that you will meet in town. We also have wear, and wear is kind of how our body is taking damage. Every 10 points of wear we get, we will take a minor wound. We can take 10 minor wounds before we die. We can take 3 major wounds before we die. Major wounds are pretty hard to heal. There is a NPC named Martha Shaw in the town of Grimscar that can help us heal major wounds by going on quests for her. Minor wounds heal completely whenever you go back to Grimscar to rest. We also have our combat dice information. We start with a D6. We have a reserve die of a D4 that can be used once per combat. We can keep track of our weapons. So far right now, I just have a blunted sword and a wooden buckler for my armor, and that will allow me to add +1 to my armor saves. We have warmth. You have to wear clothes in this game because the dark-wheeled forest is very cold and icy, and you're often told to check your warmth, and you need to have a certain amount of warmth to pass those warmth tests, or else you take some cold damage. We have 3 currencies, so we have our copper coins. Those are the main currency. Those are the most valuable. We have our half coins, so every 2 half coin equals 1 copper coin. And then we have our wooden tokens. Every 4 wooden token equals 1 copper coin. And so you will be keeping track of those as well. And then we have our inventory here. And this is our backpack. And basically our backpack can hold as much stuff as we can write in this square. So those are the characters. And right now I have traveled through 7 hexes. And you can travel through 18 hexes. At the end of that, you need to be back in Grimscar to rest. And if you're trapped out into the wilderness at 18 hexes, your character dies. What's really interesting though is the forest kind of has a memory. As you are out exploring, you will be rolling up on a bunch of random tables. So each one of these areas, the normal forest, the dark forest, and the savage forest, has a D100 table that you will roll up for your random encounter. A whole bunch of these have subtables. So sometimes you might roll up on this hedge enclosure, but then the hedge enclosure will have a D6 subtable. So there's a ton of variety. And each of the main areas also has its own kind of custom D100 table of encounters to roll on. Each of the expansions also comes with a new area that you can explore. And this is kind of the deep thicket. You can kind of take off in a certain direction and travel through a certain number of hexes before you find a boss to fight at the end of that deep thicket. And this also has its own D100 table to roll on. And the expansions also have their own NPCs to interact with. But the memory part is super cool, the way the forest remembers. So most of the hexes that you roll up will be random, and each day you go out, those random hexes will change. However, certain hexes will become permanent hexes, and you will keep track of your permanent hexes on your permanent features, and you will keep track of what those are. And then every day that you go out, you have to fill in those new permanent hexes. So those are places that you can revisit. That's kind of how the forest has memory. A really cool thing about that is when you are in combat and you escape combat, the hex that you escaped from becomes a monster lair. And that monster lair is a new permanent hex that will feature that monster that you escaped from. And so you can go back to that hex in order to fight the monster again. I think that is so cool. I absolutely love that. But right now I am in Hex 7. And the last thing I did here was there was a frozen scene and I had to defeat a frozen acolyte in a fight, this kind of ice cultist who was wandering around the forest. And I want to go back and I want to rest because I want to talk a little bit about the town of Grimscar. So it's really cool. We have this thing called the Town Addendum, and this is all kinds of like history and lore and information about the town. We have the history of Grimscar, its current situation, how it feels about that forest, that dark wild. We have magic and belief, different demons, and then we get into the Citizens Addendum. And this is one of the most interesting things about the game is there are various citizens that you can visit while you are back in town. And some of those citizens are approachable. You can go and visit them right away. Some of those citizens will offer up quests and you can purchase things. They can help you heal. But some of those citizens are restricted citizens and you have to meet certain types of thresholds, certain criteria to engage with those restricted citizens. Sometimes when you are out exploring, you might find a mysterious item that might unlock the ability to meet that restricted citizen. The first time you play, you're going to be taking on a quest from the Alderman, and the Alderman's quest is to find a Tier 1 quest item. So I think the way this game handles quests is really cool as well. So the Alderman's quest, and the Alderman is sending you out into the forest to find some food, to find some things to help the children of Grimscar survive. And you are looking for a Tier 1 quest item. Tier 1 items will always be in the normal forest. When you roll up a random encounter and you find a Tier 1 item, that's a generic item that once found becomes the object of your quest. And so sometimes you might have to say your quest might send you out to find a Tier 2 item. Well, a Tier 2 item you know is going to be in the dark forest. A Tier 3 item is going to be in the savage forest. And I like the way that it uses those generic terms, Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3, to represent different things depending on the quest you are on. But once you go back to the town, you can go and visit Martha Shaw. She's an herbalist. She might heal you, and she has a number of different quests that you can go on. Or maybe you'll come across Barrick Bramwell, the town carpenter. He has his own quests and story. We have Farnham, a Ravencloud. You can go to Farnham to buy weapons and armor, and he has quests for you. Foley Eastleigh, Neridia Greenwood. So all of these NPCs are just hanging out in town, and you can choose to go and talk to them, read their story, and then undertake their quest. You can only have one quest active at a time. However, there are some secret mystery quests that you can find while you are exploring, and if you find one of those, you can add it to your quest log. But you can only have one major quest going at a time, and you can drop them at any time. Some quests will have a number of days that they have to be completed by, and other certain restrictions. And then we have our restricted citizens. And so these, you kind of don't know exactly what you need to do to unlock them. So there's quite a bit of mystery in this game. But I've just gone through Hex 7 here, and I want to head back into Grimscar. I do have a little bit of money. I don't think I can afford anything. Stuff is very expensive. This is a very rough life in Grimscar. And I have 2 permanent hexes, and I've noted those as A and B here. So let me add those to my permanent features. So I have Hex A is there, and Hex B. So those are my permanent features. Those are always going to be in the forest when I explore. And so let me go to my key map here. So A is a twisted oak. And I can spend 2 survival to search through this weird twisted oak to find this heart chamber that allows me to possibly find some things that might help me survive. So I'm going to write twisted oak here, twisted oak, and that is on page 48 on the table there. And so I know that this hex will always have a twisted oak that I can search. Now Hex B here, that is the enemy lair, the bow demon. So I'm going to write bow demon lair. And so if I ever want to challenge that bow demon again, I have to go back to Hex B. Once a layer is cleared of the enemy, it becomes a random hex. And then again, that might possibly become another permanent hex as we are exploring. But okay, so I can erase all of these because the next time I go into this forest, it's ever changing. Things are going to be changing all the time except for those permanent locations. Now you can also get these dry erase marker mats here, and those might actually be better for your journey map. And they also have, I think you can buy these dry erase character sheets as well. So we have this now. I'm going to transfer my permanent features to my journey map of A and B. So we know those are filled in now. So my map is ready. This can also be erased, or you can just print out a new one, or you can keep track of your hexes in a journal. And maybe that's what I'll do here. Or I can actually just cross these out and maybe just start with number 1 there rather than erasing. You guys don't want to see me erase. That's not good content, right? Okay, so I am in town now. I am back in Grimscar. So I could choose to go to any of these citizens and maybe talk to them. And let's go check out, I don't really need to be healed. I do heal all of my minor wounds when I go back to town. I haven't suffered any major wounds yet, so there's really no reason to go to the herbalist. I'm still on my quest for the alderman, and I need to find that one tier 1 item. I still haven't found that yet. But I want to check out possibly Farnham Ravencloud here and just see what maybe he has to offer. I don't think I can afford anything though. Let's see, what do I have? I have 7 Half coins divided by 2, that would be 5. So 12. 12 tokens here divided by 4 would be 3. So I only have like 15 copper coins. And as you can see, the cheapest thing is a femur knife for 40. And what else do we have here? Some armor. Well, armor is even more expensive at 40. I don't know. Maybe you don't want to go to him. Who sells clothes? Let's see. Here we go. So Foley Eastley, the market foreman, manages the stalls. Foley is often found hanging around the tin market stalls in the poky market square of Grimscar. You spot him standing next to his foreman's hut and you raise a hand. He comes over to meet you. And you see there are a few people on the stalls, but only 4 are occupied. He wears a large leather pouch at his side in which you know he keeps wooden tokens. Looking to buy something? He says, addressing you by name. So we can read that, might learn some more information. What else does he say here? A young, smarmy man named Neville Hawthorne stands at a wide barrel, a makeshift stall selling rations for 5. So I can buy rations. Rations you can use while you're exploring to heal some minor wounds. You can take kind of a quick rest while you are exploring. But let's see, what say you? Also, Val Whitlock is selling some clothing in one stall. Roll twice on the market clothing table below to see what they are. There are different items here when you next return. You can spend 1 charm point to reduce the cost of one item by 1 copper coin, apart from the gloves, because the gloves only cost 1. So let's roll a d10 twice and see what clothing items are available, because my warmth, I really need to raise my warmth. Right now I have a tunic and boots. So hopefully we find something for our head or our hands. 2, a body as a warmth 2. My body, I have a tunic at a warmth 3, so that's not going to help me. And a 9, a scarf for head of warmth 1. For 2 coins. Yes, I will buy a scarf. So now I am wearing a scarf on my head. That adds another warmth 1. So my warmth now is up to 6, and I spent 2 copper coins. Okay, so I have a little bit more warmth. Most of the warmth thresholds I've come across so far have been like 7 or above. So unfortunately, I couldn't reach that first threshold. We have some other quests we can take if we want to continue to talk to some of these NPCs. I don't think I really need to buy anything else. I wonder if there's any other stuff I could buy. I really like how you kind of have to explore this town and learn the NPCs and really read what they have to say, because they will offer you other things. I think that's really, really cool. I just love this game so much. I've had so much fun playing it. But let's go ahead and head back out into the forest. So let me move my character sheet over. I will take my journey map. We don't really need our permanent features map right now. This is just to keep track of things every time we go back to town to update our permanent features. Okay, so we are in Grimscar, and it's the beginning of a new day. So I'm going to keep track of my days here. So we've gone to day 1, and now we're on day 2. We are in Grimscar, and let's go ahead and just explore down here. So I'll write a number 1 on that hex there. I will write a 1 there so I can keep track of what that hex is. And then I will roll a d100 to see what we find here. Okay, 29. So let's go look at 29 here in the forest table. There's the forest table, and we are at 29. Trap trees. Oh boy, that doesn't sound good. This area of the forest is densely packed. Roll a d6. A 1. Okay, 1 to 2. They are silver birch trees. No matter what type of tree, so we find here at 1, we find silver birch trees. And no matter what type of tree, there is something strung between 4 of them. It's an old tarp made of rope, thorns, and some kind of sticky tar. Roll a d6, a 6. Okay, so what do we have here? 6, 5 to 6. A sack is caught up in the tree tarp where someone escaped. Roll a d6 to see what's inside. A 4. There is some moss inside. Roll on the unusual moss table. Okay, we found some kind of moss. Let's see where the unusual moss table is. Page 108. And unusual moss table, this is a D10 roll, 7. So we have found stinger moss. You can rub this on your weapon and do an extra minor wound for 1 successful hit in combat. Okay, interesting. That's pretty cool. So we found some moss. Again, if you're into journaling, you could keep more detailed journals. I just like to use a few little words or sentences on this key map. For me, that is plenty. But we found some stinger moss. So I will add stinger moss to my backpack. And I'm just going to note what page that is on in case I need the rule. So that is on page 109. Okay, so that is that hex there. So now we can continue to explore. Again, you can explore 18 hexes in a day. That's quite a bit. I might have maybe bumped that down to 12 just to keep the days a little shorter, but it's not that big of a deal. So, okay, so let's see. Our next hex is 56. Where do we want to go? Let's go over here to 2. If you backtrack through a numbered hex, you don't have to have that encounter again. Anytime you enter a permanent hex, you do have to take that encounter. So that's, again, one of the differences. And what did we roll? 56, a shattered tombstone. There was a building here. It long ago crumbled and the area has been reforested. Beyond the foundations, you find a mound of stones at the rear that was clearly once a tombstone. Laying amongst the stones is a body that seems to be frozen. You feel the cold. Okay, so here we have to check our warmth. If you have a warmth of 6 or lower, see, again, that threshold is 7 there. My warmth is only 6, so that scarf didn't help me here. Lose 1 patience. So it's so cold out in this world that I'm losing patience with traveling. So my patience is 4, and that goes down to 3. I'm having a really rough time getting angry out here. Okay, it is a frozen acolyte that has been drawn to the area. It raises and attacks. If you survive, you can search this site. Okay, so we have to fight a frozen acolyte. I'm going to use the provided bookmark to throw that in there, and then I'll go to my combat cards here. And these are in alphabetical order. We have things like a bark fiend, a bow demon, a sin fanatic, the eidolon, the horned dweller, the mutated bull, the slithering mass, so all kinds of crazy things. And so we have the frozen acolyte. Okay, so here is that dude there. So the frozen acolyte. We also have this handy chart here to keep track of some combat stats, and this does come in handy. So we are fighting the frozen acolyte. He can take 5 minor wounds before he dies, or 3 major wounds before he dies. He has a combat die of D4 and a D4, so he's going to roll 2 D4, and he has a reserve die of D4, which can be added to that roll. When he rolls a D4, if he rolls a 3 or a 6 on those 2 totals, he will do a chilling touch or a freezing cloud. And so that is a special ability that he has. When we kill, or if we kill the frozen acolyte, we can roll on the body search table. Maybe we can find something. And on your combat sheet, you can keep track of the stats that you have used to add value to your combat. You can keep track of the ability numbers, so 3 or 6 that the enemies have that trigger their abilities. You will keep track of your wounds and the enemy's major and minor wounds. So the first thing we do is we take a look at my combat die. Here is a D6, and I have a reserve die of a D4. That reserve die can be used once per combat. You can also use your stats once per combat, each stat. So I can use rage, hatred, butcher, patience, pity, hope. I can use all of those in a single round of combat, but only once each. So I have a D6. We'll take my green D6 for me. The frozen acolyte has a D4. I will grab a couple D4 for the frozen acolyte. So the first thing we'll do is we will roll these and see what the total is. Okay, terrible. I rolled a 1 and the frozen acolyte rolled a 7. The first thing we'll do is we'll check the natural roll. That's a 7, so it does not trigger one of its abilities. Okay, but now I have a choice. I can choose to use my reserve die, and my reserve die is a D4. I think I will. So what did he get? I only have 2 D4. He has a 7 total so far. So I will use my reserve die. And a 2. No, okay, so that only gives me a 3. So I would have lost that combat. Let's say I didn't choose to use my reserve die. Let's say I wanted to use one of my stats. So I only rolled a 1. My rage is 6, hatred is 5, my butcher is 7, patience 3, pity 3, hope 4. I need to get over a 7. And so I think I will go ahead and use my butcher. So my butcher is 7. Actually, you know what? I think I'm just going to take the damage in this round. Because if I get a certain total, and it might trigger this Frozen Acolyte to use its reserve die. That 1 was just really bad, and I think that puts me in a bad situation. So because the Acolyte's total is more than double what I rolled, I'm going to take a major wound. So what I can do is I can use my shield to try to block that to make it become a minor wound. And my shield will give me a +1. So I need to roll a 6 in order to block that. And oh, a 5. No, I did not. Okay, man, this guy really walloped me. So I take a major wound. That's really bad. I wasn't able to block it. And we now have to roll on the major wound table to see what happens. Major wound table 104. Okay, let's go to our major wound table here. So a major wound table is a D8 and 2. Deep bruising. The impact of the hit has instantly turned the skin a deep red, and you are lucky the bone isn't broken. You cannot use your reserve die until you have rested in Grimscar for a couple of nights, so 2 nights. As you progress, as you rest more, your body will take more wear because you become tired. You become weaker as you rest. You know, you're not using your muscles. You're not exercising. So we'll have to rest twice. Let's see here. Gain 2 rage and lose a hope. Okay, so my rage now is up to 8 and my hope falls down to 3. So hopefully I can use my rage now in order to come back and kill this guy. So I haven't used anything. So I'm in pretty good shape, I think, for this next round of combat. I can't use my reserve die though. So I need to rest 2 days before I can use that. Okay, so I will roll my D6. He will roll the 2D4. And oh my God, I'm just getting butchered by this guy. I keep rolling that 1, 4, 5, 6. Let's say I rolled something better, for example. Let's say I rolled a 5 here. Okay, so 5, he rolled a 6. I need to do something to get a little bit extra. I think I'm going to use my rage. So I'll check off my rage here. My rage is 8, so I'm up to 13 now. And 13 to 6. So because I rolled higher, there's a chance that the Frozen Acolyte might actually use its reserve die. However, it also rolled a 6, so that's going to trigger his Freezing Cloud. Gain 1 wear if you have no head clothing. Oh, cool. Okay, so he breathed this frozen cloud, this freezing cloud, and it enveloped my head. But because I have that scarf, I was able to ward off that damage. Very, very cool. So I won't have to take that. However, let's take a look here. If it loses a round of combat and the difference is equal to or less than half of its reserve die maximum value, it will roll its reserve die. So there's a chance that the enemy will roll its reserve die. And the chance is kind of if it will make a difference. He rolled a 6. The most he could get is a 4 because his reserve die is a D4. So that really wouldn't make a difference. So it is not going to use its reserve die. We have done double the roll, 13 to 6. And so we do a major wound to the Frozen Acolyte. So he will have 1 major wound. Let's do one more round of combat. Man, I hate these double D4 compared to a D6 is really bad. Okay, there we go. 3, 4, 5, and 6. That's very, very good. So Chilling Touch. Actually, one thing we need to do, we need to go back. We used Rage. And so because we used Rage, we actually need to roll on the table to see what the consequence of us using the Rage is. And those are under the Stat Consequences table. And so 110 here. Stat consequences, we used Rage. So let's see what happens for our Fit of Rage. Let me grab another D6 and 5. You pause, trying to control the burning rage deep within. Your hesitation costs you a -1 to your next attack roll, and I lose 2 pity. So my pity is now down to 1. I have no pity for these these demons and creatures and evil people out in this forest. I do lose 1 on my next roll, so that would have dropped to a 5. So now it's 5 to 5. And I think I'm going to use my butcher. So my butcher is going to go up from 7 to 8. I will add 7 to that, and that is 12. 12 to 5. If he rolled a d4, there's no way he could use that. So he's not going to use his reserve die. He does not trigger his abilities. I do another major wound to the Frozen Acolyte for having more than double what he rolled. We'll add another major wound. However, I do need to roll up on the consequence of using my butcher. I went into a butcherous a butcherous rage here, and let's see what that happens. Let's see what happens. 6. Somehow in your frenzy, you find an edge and break through the enemy's attack again and again, chopping as you do. Cause an extra 2 minor wounds and lose a charm. Okay, so he takes 2 minor wounds and I lose a charm. My charm is now 0, so I'm not very charming. I'm probably covered in blood and gore, and maybe I smell of some kind of smell of death. So I'm not going to be very charming the next time I go back to town. So yeah, so that was it. Nothing really bad happened. And then combat would continue like that. He needs 1 more major wound or 3 more minor wounds in order to be defeated. Let's say we defeated the Frozen Acolyte, and then we could go back to our table here and we can search. So it rises an attack. If you survive, you can search the site. So let's search the site and see what we find. 1. And 1. You find nothing. Great. Had we rolled a 5 or a 6, we would have found a tier 1 quest item. Man, too bad. I haven't found that quest item yet. So the combat. Combat is quite interesting in this game. It's pretty involved. It's a little fiddly, but there are some really good choices to make because you can choose when to use your reserve die in kind of retaliation. You can choose when you want to use one of your stats to add to your total. However, keep in mind, as your rage and hatred and butcher build up, you will be doing more damage, but those things can come back to haunt you when you have certain interactions with NPCs or with certain random encounters that you find out in the wild. And you also want to hold on to some of your patience, pity, and hope, because as those go down, you're going to be filled with more rage, and you will be, you have a more dour outlook on life, and you really want to try to hold on to some hope in this world because you're kind of like the only source of hope that the people of Grimscar have. So I really do like that system a lot. I think it's super cool. But let's go ahead and explore another hex. Again, I do need to go back to Grimscar to rest for 2 days or so that I can use my reserve die again. I can't do that yet. Yeah, let's go ahead and explore one more hex. I will go to 3 here. We will roll our D100 and 60. Okay, so let's go to hex 60 here, encounter 60. And we find a, whoops, I forgot to write this. So this was 2. This was an attack of a Frozen Acolyte. And hex 3 here is a Shadowy Grove. So Shadowy Grove. And this is that the trees grow in a tight cluster here, forming a shadowy grove. You must navigate it to continue. Roll a d6. Before you roll, you can spend 1 survival point to increase the total by 1. 1 to 3 equals, okay, so a survival point. Yes, I will use a survival point. I have 6, now I have 5. Again, another choice there. I love when you have a currency that you can choose to spend. It always feels like just a good choice to make. And 3, 4. Okay, so on a 1 to a 3, nope. We rolled on a 4 to a 5 here. It is damper here. You discover a collection of edible mushrooms and collect them. You can give them out in town and gain 1 reputation, and you may use 1 for a ration. Super cool. Okay, so I found some mushrooms. And the mushrooms I can either give to town, you know, I can pretend to give them or give them to one of the NPCs. We can say, if you want to develop your story further, you know, maybe you take them to the herbalist, or maybe you take them to the guy who sold us the clothes and you give him the mushrooms. So you can develop your story more. I will add mushrooms, and those will be for 1 rep or for 1, what is that, 1 ration. Again, a ration can be spent after combat in order to heal some minor wounds. And I do also want to make sure I add my major wound there. We could add that the major wound will prevent me from using my reserve die, but I just have that written. But yeah, that is Grimscar. We could head back to the town to rest. We could rest for 2 days. I can't remember exactly what happens when we rest. So let me find that area. Okay, so here it is, inactivity. So when you loaf about in town, this section here tells you what happens. And the longer you stay in town, kind of the worse it is. You know, you're the town's champion. They have tasked you with doing stuff to help them. And if you loaf around town, if you're lazy or you just need to rest, they kind of lose hope in you. They lose patience with you. And so things are not going to be good. But yeah, man, this game is awesome. I love it. As you can see, you know, the combat has a lot going for it. It can be a little fiddly. You do have to make some good choices, though. Sometimes combat can go on a little long, but it's not just rolling dice and comparing numbers. There's a little more to it, especially when you factor in the enemies having those special abilities. They have a chance of using their reserve die, and you will get rewards. I guess we should have rolled up on that reward, right? For killing. If we would have killed that that frozen acolyte here, we do have a reward table, and that is the body search table on page 96 here. So we might have found, had we killed that, we might have found a number 1 here. The body twitches and a creature covered in blood bursts from the torso. Gain 1 pity and fight another amalgam beast. Oh man, so we would have killed that frozen acolyte, and then we would have had to fight the amalgam beast. What's the amalgam beast? That does not sound good. Oh, not too bad. Major wounds on minor wounds 10, D6, and D8. Okay, yeah, I do not want to fight amalgam beast right now. But yeah, as you can see, there is a lot of different encounters. A lot of those encounters have sub-encounters, so there's a ton of variety. There's a lot of mystery involved with the NPCs and talking to them and figuring out what they need, how to help them, how to go on these quests. And so far, I've only played in the regular forest. I haven't even ventured out into the dark forest or the savage forest. I haven't even thought about touching the deep thicket yet. And that new Kickstarter, there's going to be 4 new zine expansions. So man, the future is bright for Grimscar the game. However, the future for Grimscar the place, yeah, not too bright. It's looking pretty deadly. So, all right, everyone, I hope you enjoyed taking a look at the Grimscar solo Hexcrawl RPG. Again, I highly, highly recommend this game. I think this game is fantastic.